we looked at interveners. We wanted to know, well, who's intervening in the lives of these kids? So, oh wait, I'm sorry. What you'll have to do is go back to page 26. So you will see that we actually made a little acronym for people to remember called Rescue Child. It doesn't have to be, Rescue Child does not, it's not in stone. We can change it. Somebody comes up with a better, snappier term. Doesn't matter. We want people to just remember. They can say to themselves, oh, Rescue Child. So if I'm an emergency room nurse, I can say Rescue Child, and I can run through what these things mean. And if I find a number of these things are happening, then maybe I can have a response to that. So this is sort of an immediate assessment that first responders could have. Now on page 27, we have an immediate intervention that first responders could do. It's called divert. So the first thing they would do is they would detect high risk factors using the Rescue Child assessment. These are not kids that they may be kids that are being trafficked right now. They may be kids that are high risk for being trafficked. I know a lot of social workers, when they read through Rescue Child, they're going to say, geez, that's a lot of kids on my caseload. Right. So they detect that this kid is at high risk. They intervene by detaining the child long enough to respond. Make up something. Leave them in your room. Have them do something. Say you have to go do something. So that you keep them there in your office or in your ER or whatever long enough. The V is valuing the child's strengths and the ability to survive. That's trauma-informed practice. To not be demeaning, to call them a prostitute or a little prostitute or whatever, but to identify that this person has survived what they've gone through so far, because their lives, if they have these risk factors, has not been pleasant. To educate the child about sex trafficking and your responsibility to report because of their own safety. And then to report. To call child protection, to call the police, and then to call the trafficking hotline so that we can keep good stats at the trafficking hotline on what's going on, where the calls are coming from, and who's being affected in Ohio. If a worker does that alone, that would probably take them 20 minutes, half hour of their time, to make a call and maybe save someone's life. And services, we won't go over that because I know that Michelle Hannon has that all taken care of. We just thought, there's an A, B, C, D to it if you were to engage yourself in comprehensive services. This here is just for people who are on their jobs, who need to make a difference, and who need to keep working the rest of the day. Now I want to move to interveners, which is page 15. We asked people who were currently victims or who had been victims, did anybody intervene in your life to try to divert you, to try to protect you? And we found that not a lot of people did, and that's expected because not a lot of people were aware and could identify. But of those people that did, probation officers, family friends were sort of the highest groups for kids under the age of 18 who were trafficked. Teachers, in this sample, no one intervened. Again, that makes sense to me because teachers haven't been educated and haven't been made aware. So that just sort of reinforces the idea that we have to engage the schools. And that's our third recommendation, is to really engage the schools. Fourth recommendation is that assessment that I just talked about. Fifth recommendation is to reduce stigma. Now, you won't find any statistics or data related to that one, So if you'd like to challenge me or discount that one, I'd probably go with you. That's just an opinion that we thought if we had a shared language, the governor's task force and all those agencies, if we engaged in trauma-informed practice and trauma-informed care, and if we actively, out of all of our professional mouths, said the same things and had a foundation about victimization, that we could, in fact, over time, begin to reduce the stigma, and we thought that was a good idea. Do we have data to back it up? No. So you can feel free to throw that one out if you like, or adopt it.
I think also across the media, if we could get that language out there, because we still see, news reports where they still cite the youth as juvenile prostitutes. We would like to change that.
Yes, thank you. And because the news media are here, we would like to strongly suggest. I read something that said a 14-year-old child prostitute was rescued. You have to understand the damage. If a child has been taken and victimized and traumatized, and now she's called a child prostitute for everybody in her community to read, is not, I think, responsible reporting. So, having said that, the other recommendation that we've had are for buyers. This trafficking, of course, is about supply and demand and distribution. Supply are the victims, demand are the buyers, and distributors are the traffickers. We cannot reduce the problem unless we focus and understand the problem. So, to continue to arrest or respond to the supply and prosecute the trafficker is not going to reduce the problem. We've got to talk about the buyers, and it's uncomfortable. But if we shy away from that, then we're not really serious about reducing the problem. So, yes. Teresa Feder was saying this is the first time we've seen buyers' pictures, and if you look on page 16, it was such a rarity that I had to print it and put it in the report. So, who purchases sex in Ohio? Now we're not talking about who purchases victims. We're talking about who purchases sex. Women who are maybe there because they choose it, maybe they're because they're trying to survive, maybe they're because they're victims. We don't know. We just simply asked everybody in the study who bought sex. We see drug dealers, factory workers, truckers, businessmen, city employees, law enforcement, lawyers, construction workers, teachers, military men, managers, retail workers, government employees, postal employees, state employees, semi-professional sports players, social workers, politicians, judges, pastors, ministers, men. Now, I know this is a delicate issue, because in our minds we're thinking, wow, these are people that live under bridges. But people that live under bridges can't afford this type of entertainment. So, in my mind, it makes sense. I know it's shocking probably to a lot of people, but in my mind, it's who you're in proximity of, who you interact with. And so, that makes sense to us. On page 17, buyers of victims that were involved in sex trafficking through manipulation. So these are adults, and we asked them, do you give most or all your money to someone, to an adult, and who's involved with you or who's in charge of you or whatever? And so we called this trafficking through manipulation. And so you can see the buyers of that group of sellers. The buyers of victims trafficked by force is page 18. These are, again, are adults. Adult women or men who are being sold, and this is who they're being sold to. We're not saying the buyer has knowledge that the victim is there by force. But this is who is buying sex. Now, you can feel free to challenge that, because that would be, of course, good critical thinking. We can say that we asked women in the study a lot of scary questions, and we've got a lot of scary answers. And so why they would choose to lie about this issue, well, maybe they did. I would find that fascinating, why they would, tell the truth about very scary parenting practices and drug use and things that really make them not look like very good human beings. And then to not tell the truth about this. The other thing that you could question is, were these women in Ohio at the time that they sold? That would be a valid question. Some of them were in Ohio, some of them weren't in Ohio. Some of them sold to both professions while they were in Ohio and while they weren't in Ohio. I think it's a national phenomenon. I don't think it's unique to Ohio.